So the first thing I'd like to do is kind of see who's in the room, and we're not going to make you each say your names and all that. But we will ask you for what level your children are in. But I think it's good for you to see some of the people that you get emails from along the way. So I'll let Freya start.
Hi, my name is Prerna. I work in the administrative services. Most of you would have interacted with me in some capacity about enrollment, extended learning, and here to help answer any questions you have. I've been here at the school for 10 years now. And I have a teenager who is in the high school program.
Thanks.
I'll go next. I have kiddos out there. Oh, right here. My name is Paige Bowling. I'm the health services coordinator. I collaborate with Taylor, who is the wife of a teacher here. She's a nurse practitioner. We write the health plans. I'll support your kiddos if they get hurt. If there's any health needs or anything like that, do that. Immunizations, all that good jazz. I have 2 kids here. One is in Jasper and one is in Tundra.
Awesome. Thanks, Paige.
I'm Melissa. I had 2 kids graduate. This is a school they've only ever known. One's in college. She's in her junior year. And I work in finance and do HR for the school.
I'm Kelly. I work at the card desk with Paige. I'm backup for health services. I do attendance. I help deal with student records. I help with finance. So, and my 2 boys graduated from here as well.
You've been here how long too?
It'll be 14 years in September.
What was it for you, Melissa?
Hannah started in this building in 2006, so I've been a part of the community for a long time.
Yeah, right.
My name is Portland Waters Murray. I'm the community ambassador, so I send live emails through social media and also work with volunteers on campus. So if you signed up for the volunteer workshop in a couple weeks or are looking to do that soon, we'll be working together for things like volunteers for the natural playground and for the food pantry. But yeah, also doing like school-wide events. So coming up this semester, it'll be things like the Family Business Showcase and Book Fair, and then later winter gifting, things like that.
And for things like the community pantry and volunteer for the natural playground, you don't even need to come to the workshop, but we still would love for you to. But those are things you can do on your own time, whenever it's convenient for you. So let's see who's in the room. Early ed families or nursery families? Great. 6 to 9-year-old families? Great. 9 to 12-year-old, you're going to keep raising, yeah. 12 to 14? Yeah. 14 to 18. So a big mixture of all of you. And what I try to do is I look at this every year and I think, how can we make it better? What questions did we ask or answer? So please, you're not going to bother me, raise your hand at any point and say, how does this work? Or what can we do about this? You've met a lot of folks now. So you've met your child's or your children's teachers and the PPCs. Now you've met all of the Cupola. Do you know why we call it the Cupola Staff? Does anyone know? They're like, what is that? You ever notice the Cupola emails, that picture on the front? That picture, it's the picture right in the entrance of the school and that juts out of the roof. It's called a cupola. So it's the architectural structure of that. We don't just need things to be completely weird. We also have reasons for it, right? Like we named the classroom studios because it just didn't look like a regular classroom. So we kept brainstorming, what could we call them? That's where it came up to that. So instead of saying front office staff or admin, it felt better to say the Cupola staff. So those were the folks you just met just now. And then we have lots of other support staff throughout the building, everything from supporting children in studios and supporting the maintenance of the building. So those folks are also part of each level as well. We already did. So you have it, go back up one just a minute. So if you did meet Eva's Glenn, he's always late. I'm kidding. We went to take our dogs home, but he'll pop in probably in a minute. And most of you have met him, and not one way or the other, but I think Stephanie, who also works up there with Paige, wasn't here tonight, but you met all the rest of those folks, so. And these are the two most popular non-humans in the building, Tico and Leo. And Presley had been with us for 15 years, and we did a retirement for him at the end of last year, and then he passed over the summer. So lots of kids come in and say, "Where's Presley?" Or, "I heard my mom told me about Presley." And so if you hear some of that, this was Presley. He was a 15-year-old rescue. Irish Wolfhound is what my husband Glenn wants to call it, but also probably a Labradoodle or something like that. So we have 4 dogs at home now. Tico and Leo are 2 of them. And so Leo's in training. I know he looks like a pup, but he's really almost 10 years old. So he just is a pup in heart, like all of us, right? But, sometimes we're still working on his barking. He does great with the kids, but a golden doodle's like out of the blue bark. We're still working on that part. So some days he is here and some days he's not. So you heard Cortland, who introduced herself a few minutes ago as part of our parent involvement partnership. During probably right after the start of the pandemic, when everyone said, "What do I want to do when I grow up?" Right? People started to rethink what they wanted for themselves and for their family. And we had a PIP, so since the second year of the school, we created a group probably about half this size, when there was 59 children, and we were in the little strip mall off Grant Line Road. And we talked about, do we want to do a traditional PTA, PTO? What does that mean? How does that work? And we came up with something, well, you can imagine, different. And so we called it the Parent Involvement Partnership, or PIP. And then eventually, it was just like everyone was a member, and we just talked about things we needed to, and we did workshops. And then later, maybe, I don't know how many years ago, 7 years or more ago, we started a PIP council, a group of people that kind of organized and helped to do some of the activities and events for the school. And then after the pandemic, that kind of waned, and people said, "I just don't want to work as hard as I used to anymore." And so PIP workshops have kind of gone back into the school model, but who knows what will happen? I'm always listening and open to what is the next thing. So, but right now, most of that is done just through parents. We have the same types of things we did before with the PIP council. We just ask, for volunteers, and we always get a flood of them. So that's super helpful. But as our community ambassador, she had, there's any ideas that you'd like to do? I know we had a parent that says, what was it? Was it what's he want to do this year in the CASA? Was it she's like, I don't remember. It was Sarah's husband. Was it I can't even think of an activity right now. It's just my mind is blank.
My last one was invasive species removal.
Oh. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, there's Glenn. Did you want to introduce yourself? I told him you're always late. Well, then I said you wouldn't took the dogs. So.
Well, I took dogs home, got one with a drink.
Wow.
Food dogs. Family liaison, married Barbara, supporting enrollment, supporting learners, supporting security,
Maintenance, security, technology.
Everything. So we just kind of traffic control, exactly.
Pest control.
Pest control right now, mosquitoes in the back door. So yeah, we just kind of do anything we do to kind of help you all feel comfortable about the partnership with us and helping you run your continue to grow. So glad to help.
I wondered if people were open. We come to a screen like this to share, be someone who would read. A screen that's got a poem or a phrase or a quote on it. Anybody open? Yeah, please, thanks.
We've embarked on a new journey. Thank you for coming to find the best way to transition your child, not just to the building, but to the philosophy we believe we will set them and you on a holistic road to success.
Now, that may feel like a little Pollyanna for some of us, right? Like, oh, just do these things. But, and there most certainly will be things that you'll feel uncomfortable about, Like I haven't found in the 29th year at this school that all of us agree all the time. It's kind of like one big family, right? And when something comes up that triggers us into feeling like we're in fight or flight, or we don't feel like this is safe for our child, or we want this thing instead. Like, we just started talking, right? Because we're small enough and we're, we on purpose are this size. We didn't want to be bigger than this. This is the capacity of this building, and that's it. And because we want to still have good relationships with all of our families and with the children and teens, and it really does take all of us to be a part of that process. I mean, if you've read, and I'm sure every one of you've read the handbook, we'll do a test later, but I mean, it talks in there's like maybe a half or a whole page on trying to be a gossip-free school. Do you think it's possible? No. Some of you say no. No. Yes. Any yeses? Maybe.
Probably ebbs and flows, right?
Ebbs and flows. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe that's the best we could be, right? Is that THINK acronym, right? Is it true? Is it helpful? I. Is it inspiring? N. Is it necessary? And K. Is it kind? Right? Like if we just do that thing, like then we can be less of a gossiping community. And so we really do want you to question us, to ask a hard question, to share a difficulty. Like that's how we're human together. If not, we're all just like doing our own little thing out here and being either frustrated or happy, right? So I hope it doesn't have to be tonight, but as you are on this journey, like we're here, we're not perfect. Every day we're trying, but I'm sure at some point something will rub you differently than you want it to. And like, let's talk about it because we'll learn too. I mean, we change all the time. And I don't mean like big changes, but we're always thinking of how we could do something better. 29th year, and all the level meetings last week and this week, we're talking about bug spray and sunscreen. And you'd think like after 29 years we'd have that figured out, but it changes all the time and people have different thoughts and there's new laws, etc. So it's a constant evolution. So a little history. I know some of you know this from doing the virtual tour or the in-person tour, whichever you did, but I think it's a good place to start. I think knowing origin stories is helpful to have context. And so like many of you, Glenn and I were like thinking, what do we want for our own children? At the time they were 2.5 and 5. And we went to different schools, we researched different things, and we saw this segment, I think it was on 60 Minutes, on Montessori education. And I'm like, I went to college, I'm an educator. This is ridiculous, why did I never learn about this? But I was intrigued. I was intrigued not just because that I thought Dr. Montessori was a pioneer in education, but I was also intrigued that I could, children could learn in an environment where the adult was more guiding than, sage on the stage. And, in my background at IU Bloomington, I was like ready to get in there, do the thing, get the children excited and get the teenagers excited. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but this was just a different lens to look through that I had never thought about before. And so I went to business school, Glenn did a few days later, and we thought, we want this for our children. And so we really wanted them in our own community, not to have them leave to somewhere else. So I went to our local superintendent and said, how do we get a Montessori school in New Albany? And he said, oh, Barbara, do you know how expensive Montessori schools are? I'm like, no. I mean, I just knew him because his daughter and I played softball together. And he's like, it's really expensive. And I'm like, but if I find the money, my 23-year-old self, right? And he said, yes, if you find the money, I'll be all in, right? So I went searching, IUS Library, etc. Thank you, Kate, for your support of the IUS Library. And trying to find out how to make this happen. And I started talking to people, and over a 3 or 4 year period, I probably talked to over 100 schools around the United States and globally, really, through email, and just kind of trying to find out how do you start a school? What would it look like? What's the pros and cons of a for-profit versus not-for-profit, private versus public? How would all that happen? And I learned about charter school law, and this was 1997, 1996. And so there wasn't charter school law in Indiana, but I learned that there was a legislator who had just written a law for Indiana, but it didn't pass the legislature. So I started working with her, and I started talking to people, and we eventually developed a nonprofit board of directors, and I said, now, would you please hire me to be the school leader? And not that I ever really wanted to be a school leader. I really just wanted to help it get off the ground and go back to my nice, comfortable job with the family business. But it wasn't what was meant to be, right? And so we started the school in 1998 with 59 children, from ages 3 to 6. And I told the board I had 2 goals. One was to add an age level every year through high school. And the second one was to eventually be tuition free. That I thought, like Community Montessori thought, that it should be for everyone, not just for people who could afford it. So we started that process tuition based for the first few years, as I went up to the Indianapolis every year to lobby for charter school law, because to me, and I know charter schools get a lot of bad rap, but it was the best of both worlds, right? Like an independent public school. And so I thought, that is the perfect combination. That so many reasons why people struggle, like teachers specifically in public schools, is because a lot of things are decided for them, right? And it's mostly from a state or a district perspective. And this is like, we can make these decisions ourselves as long as we have a partnership that can make that happen. So fast forward, Ball State became an authorizer. 2001, we converted to a charter school in 2002. Our 2 daughters, who started when they were 2.5 and 5, kept, we had like 1 spot open. That first year we did a lottery. So everyone got in that first year. That was scary, because here we started the school and our own children maybe didn't get in, but that's changed over time, and now there's certain groups of people that get preferences, and we kept adding an age level every year. We created this building, the first half of the building, with children and parents and board members and staff members, and said, what do we want this environment to look like? And so this wasn't just designed by somebody, it was designed by people like you that thought about, like, children would say things like, we want high ceilings. We were in a lot of strip malls, and we want lots of windows, and we actually had to get the state to give us a waiver so we could have 3 walls of windows, because the Indiana law says schools can only have 2 walls of windows. Why? I don't know. But anyway, so we created this environment to not just be beautiful and cool, but also to follow the functionality of the philosophy, right? When Dr. Marie Montessori talked about children going out, for the first, she just meant like going out of their space, like going up to the curved desk to get some Band-Aids for their studio, coming with a note to give me so that they could take a minute to regulate their body, coming to visit the dogs, etc., right? And so those going out experiences, I mean, one of my favorite things to do is walk through the teens side of the building this way and see 2 little younger people, like walking down to see the axolotl in Sycamore, right? I mean, it just is, it's warming, because they'll walk in, and oftentimes the team will say, do you see the axolotl? And we'll say, yeah, there's just 1 or 2, and they can start having this conversation. And it just helps them to see how it all connects back together. I could talk about all this. I'm on bullet point 1, it's now 7 o'clock. But that's kind of the gist of all of that. We're very grateful that our oldest now is on the campus as a psychologist, which is very cool. We need good psychologists in the world, and she does the most evaluations for special education at school. And her 4 children, her and her partner's 4 children are also on campus. And so we have twins that are 7, grands, and then a 5-year-old and a soon-to-be 3-year-old. So, what a life, right? And last spring, we also had our youngest daughter. We have 2 kiddos that was here in health services and helped out with Paige before she went to PA school this summer. So it was like you walk down the hall and see your adult child adulting right in front of you, right? So to see that all come in full circle is also pretty darn cool. So I talked a little bit about Dr. Marie Montessori. I could talk a whole lot more. I mean, I think that one of the most interesting things about her was Mussolini saw a Montessori environment, and he said, that's what I want all the schools in our country to be. And she said, tell me more. And she realized that her vision of education, which was really like peace in the world, was different than his version of education, right? And eventually that led to her being exiled out of the country of Italy. But it's a fascinating story, and I have lots of books about her personal life. We're going to talk about lots of books throughout this conversation, and you can check them out for my space even if you want to. So we are a nonprofit organization, so we have a board of 5 humans right now. You can see more about them on our website. They meet about every other month. It depends on the semester, and so I present to them different things. Melissa, our finance person, so we do all the budgets. We have an accountant that comes and joins. Sometimes staff come and do a presentation. And so they're open meetings, and you can find all of that on our website under About, I think, the governing board. So we talked a lot about a charter school, and some of you got here through the lottery, and some of you got here through the wait list. And so once your child's in first level and up, they're here, they don't have to go through another lottery. We have this focus on the whole child, and those are our 8 constructs. So we think about learning. We don't just think about numbers and letters, We also think about things like aesthetics. You're like, what? What is that? How does that pertain to this environment? Well, going out to the back 4, I might see a snake. One child might be, well, most of the time, the children are fine. It's the adults that have trouble with snakes, right? But for one person, they might have a fear of something, where another one loves it. And so it's just finding that appreciation, right, for things. And so, us not saying things like, oh, it's raining today, we can't go outside. Like, I watched a studio of our 9 to 12-year-olds. All of a sudden, it just started pouring last week, out of nowhere, it seemed. And I'm watching them, and the 2 adults just kind of like walking, like, we'll head on in. It's pouring, and they're all getting soaked, but they did like make a big deal about it. And their modeling of calmness and, we're getting a little wet, was, I thought, just such a beautiful thing. It's not like it's good or bad weather. It's just bad clothing, right? We have about 550 infants through high school on the campus. So up on the top of the hill, the little white house is our infant toddler program, so the community nursery. Beside that, there are 2 outhouses. There's the bigger building, which is our creativity cabin. So it has 2 kilns, pottery wheels, woodworking. So 2 different sets of our teens program, and sometimes 9 to 12 use those spaces for lots of really big projects. And then we have a pole barn, which has a lot of storage in it. Underneath the nursery, there's a door there that's the courage cabin. So we have, so Caitlin, who is a psychologist, also does mental health services on campus. And then we're working on our second partnership. Our partners from last year ended their agreement. And so we've got a new partner coming on in the next month. So we're excited about that. But so teens mostly just walk up when it's their time to, they just work that out with you and our courage coordinators, so that they can go up, have a therapy session, and then come back to school. So it's, if there's a separation, but there's also that independence and agency part of that. Anybody feel so moved?
Observe the child, do not intervene. This approach requires a lot of patience and discipline, but is absolutely necessary. From those observations, curate and prepare an environment best suited for his developmental stage and interest. Montessori.
I remember learning a quote something like this when I first did my first Montessori certification. And I'm like, what? What do you mean observe, or try to see? I mean, we just have to ask. We have to just go right into it, right? And how many of you, when your child was 1 or 2 and they were completely engrossed in something, and you came in and you said, what do you want for dinner? And you broke their concentration, and now they're like, Mommy, can I watch a show? Mommy, can I go outside? Dad, can I go do this, right? Who's had that happen before? And so Dr. Montessori scientists recognize that for all of us, but also young children, and even, as they go through the different stages, there's 3 planes of development, 0 to 6, 6 to 12, and 12 to 18, that, us trying to figure out what's happening or what they're thinking before we step in is a big part of what we do. And that helps us to be the best guide we can in a learning environment, right? In a holistic learning environment where children aren't feeling like they're being questioned all the time or evaluated, right? So we do that in a way that oftentimes they don't even know that's what they're doing. So we're having conversations with them. So what did you think about that? Oh, you thought that. And sometimes I'll notice certain personalities and I'll say like, yeah, you know, what were you thinking? They're like, well, obviously you don't know much about geometry. So like, oh, okay. Like, okay, so we got a little out of balance there. But, you know, just helping them to think through their process. I mean, what we're learning now with whatever's going to happen with AI, right, is the people that have work, could be like work like for money or just work like interest, that are asking questions and being curious are probably the people that are going to fare the best in this next whatever happens, right? Because they've figured out different skills in a deeper way that brings them maybe contentment, interest, curiosity, etc. So that's what we really work to do in these environments, is that we give lots of space for young people to ask questions, to be curious, to make mistakes, to be inaccurate, you know, like to work through that, and hopefully multiple times a day would be best, to have those aha moments, you know. I remember observing this child that had been struggling. This was probably the 4th year of the school. And, you know, they were like, he won't do anything. He doesn't like to do anything that's not his idea. And I was trying to coach with this teacher about it. And I said, I just want to come in and watch him. So I'm watching him, and, you know, it looks like he's talking to himself. You know, 60. And I come a little closer. Do you mind if I pretend with you? And I said, what are you thinking? And he said, there's 60 seconds in a minute. And then there's 60 minutes in an hour. And he just held. And I thought, wow, there's so much going on here. I was working with a young child today. He's almost 5. He's been at school a couple of years. It's really difficult for him to regulate. And he started reading things around my room. And I said, oh, I didn't know you were reading. He said, yes, of course. You know? And, but, you know, it's like we don't know all the things. And if we create this prepared environment for each developmentally appropriate group of people, like we can help them to be the best version of themselves, be able to learn in a pace that matches for them, right? And it isn't an environment where everyone is trying to be the best or to compete against each other. We don't compare. We just don't. We don't say, oh, like you were close to his answer, but you didn't get it. You know, we're like, okay, so you said this. All right, let's think about this. Which way we're going to go? So it's like, I think he's right. Like, we're not doing, he's right. We don't even care because we're scientists. Scientists are more focused on the why. Let's figure out the why, right? And so we're engaging with that conversation instead of comparing each other, right? Because we all know in this room, if we got out a computer or, you know, a basketball or different things, we all would have different gifts in this room. It doesn't mean that anyone's better than who, right? Because what does that mean for any of us? Some of us have different skills than others. Anybody feel moved?
School should be an extension of home. Home should be an extension of school.
I think that's our best case scenario, right? We hope. And that doesn't mean that you have to buy into everything at this school, but I will tell you the families that stay through graduation and the child, that teen that becomes a teen that thrives are the ones that have that blend, most surely. And that doesn't mean that someone else couldn't, but the more you lean in, the more you'll probably learn from that. If you're coming the end of this month to do the sub-volunteer workshop, I would say that is the number one thing parents and specifically new parents find that helps them to lean in, because it's really hard to do a conversation or read a book and know how it really works, right? When you come in the room and you see the adult, like, can I do this with you, Bailey? Like, get down to the child's level, you know, and say, you're frustrated, I hear you. You think that they were not fair, and I want to help you to have that conversation. But you have to make sure that your body's ready for that. And right now, like, you ran over there a minute ago, and you came back, and your voice is really loud. Oh, I hear you. You're saying that it's calmer now. I'm listening. But I'm wondering if you're really ready for that. Do you want to give yourself a minute? Do you want to go get a drink of water? Do you want to go see the pups and then we'll have the conversation? You know, like, so we're having different levels of conversation space for different people, and it's not until you're really in the space that you see the amazingness of the humans in this building, for sure. Letting children take the lead at school. So we bought a bus, and some people are like, what, like, you bought a bus? You're like, you're in your 29th year, what are you doing with the bus? This has been on our goal sheet for longer than you've been here. You know, it's not about like transportation necessarily, it's really more about agency. So when a young person has an idea, ready, I've had poor Cortland, I'm like, Cortland, we ready for this process yet? Because the teacher's going like, can we take the bus next week? And I'm like, we're not ready. But I hear you, you know, we're trying to be ready, but we're not ready. There's just lots of steps, and this is what's prevented us to this point. But what this bus is going to do is that every studio, and there's 18, at least one of the teachers will go through the process to be a bus driver. They don't have to have their CDL or anything. They just have to like practice with driving a vehicle this size with Glenn, and there'll be a whole process that they have to do. And once they become like the person for their studio, and sometimes it might be both the teachers, then a child has an idea like, I don't understand. When we flush the toilet, what happens? And another child in the studio goes like, it goes down the toilet? Yeah, but then like, what happens? Someone says, it goes in the sewer. But then what happens? And it might lead to this conversation, which 6 to 9-year-olds have every day about poop, and 3 to 6-year-olds. Like, where does it get cleaned? Like, do we drink this water at some point? And they might decide, this small group of children, or maybe a few others, maybe 10, are really interested and like, I want to know what happens. So they decide to go to the sewage plant in downtown New Albany. So they make a plan, and the teacher goes with these 10 kids, and they go out to the sewage plant, and they've done a tour, and the kids make the phone calls and say, we'd like to bring 10 of us to do this, and we were thinking like next Wednesday. And, you know, like they're doing all the parts of that. It starts with an idea, a thought, and then we help them to bring that to fruition. They're doing public speaking, they're doing organizational planning, right? Like they're doing all the pieces of that. And we are just part of that process. And so one of those children, their job might be to introduce the rest of the kids, you know, as we walk in. Someone else might be the note taker, someone else is going to be the presenter back to the class, whatever, right? Whatever happens in that particular studio process. And, you know, like, I mean, one of the teen studios is like, we have this group of kids that are so interested in this new place down the street, but we really wanted to go to this other one that's about 6 miles away. Can we take the bus, you know? And so just trying to take an idea or a thought, sometimes planting a thought. At the end of last year, one of the 6 to 9 studios, these kids really wanted to go on a camping trip. And this teacher was working so hard with these kids to figure out their plan. And they got it almost to fruition, but the other co-teacher had a baby, and there was just a lot going on, and they had to put it on hold, right? And so maybe they'll do it this year in their new studio because they will move it up. But, you know, like those are things that we would want to do as a part of this, and why we need more people that will volunteer and sub, because we want to keep one of them, another extra one might be going, or someone else might be staying back with the other kid, and so we want to have these trips that are organic. So that's an example of how children take the lead at school. And then, you know, if we think about letting children take the lead at home, that might look like, we're going to make stir fry tonight. Let's figure out what vegetables we want in our stir fry. Why don't you pick out the peppers, and I'll get this, right? And that would be developmentally appropriate for this age child. Another child might figure out the budget. You know, they really want to make homemade pizza at least twice a week. And they think they can do it for $10 for the family, you know, or whatever. And so, like, let's put it together, you know. So, well, you've already got the yeast. I don't have to pay for that. Okay, we'll give you the yeast for free, right? And so we are doing all these processes. Those are things you can do, too. Our 2 daughters, you know, gosh, 25 years ago, yeah, 24 to 25 years ago, they were signing their own self in at the doctor's appointments, right? Like, that's a simple thing that they can do. Probably most of your children. Like, even if they can't write their full name, you're like, are you okay if they sign in? You know, and they'll just maybe write their first name or their first few letters of their name. And they can also get a credit card. Like, our daughters, when they turned 10, they got a credit card. And with that, they would pay for the, well, not all, they couldn't get anything they want all the time, but we had a process for that. They helped us when we used to write checks to pay bills. They helped us to write the checks each month and so forth. Like, those are things that naturally can happen when we're not overwhelmed, right, with all the rest of life's happening. But those are things that can transition from school to home. And things you can think about, like setting a goal for that. All right, let's pause there before we get into this slide. See what comments, questions, thoughts. You're the group that's going to leave them all for the end. Go ahead.
I really enjoy how you guys are really focused on like living in the environment and that in the world. I feel like my daughter really struggles with that. She has cerebral palsy and is kind of incapable. We took some time over the weekend to come up to the playground and kind of check
Awesome.
it out. And she's a lot intimidated by it, to be perfectly honest. What do you guys do?
The early ed playground.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you guys do for those that are a little bit more incapable?
Right. Yeah, I think they're good questions. Actually, we're writing this grant that's going to help the early ed families not have to pay tuition, we hope, this year. That's also going to redo that playground. But that's to answer your first question, but I just want you to know that. So it would be great for you to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to help with it. Yeah. I mean, we're always trying to think of that, but you can't think of all the things. So, but anyway, so, I think that it would be interesting to me to see what she does on that environment and help us to figure out what we need, to do differently. And like, for instance, where those metal bars go up that side of the tree house.
Yeah, there's like one set of stairs there. She's pretty intimidated by the ladder.
The big, yeah. But
A
maybe
ramp would be great.
a what?
A ramp would be great.
Yeah. So where there's one set of those, maybe we put a ramp in or some other system, right? Like, I would love to see how we can modify or accommodate things like that. So, yeah. Cool. Anybody else right now?
You said that they are guaranteed to have a spot first through.
So once they're in the first level.
What about the kindergartners?
You're out of luck. No, I'm kidding. So I would say 99% of the time our kinders always get into a first level spot, but because kindergarten is still not mandatory in the state of Indiana, that's the piece. That's that small piece. So for example,
I didn't know that.
yeah, that kindergarten's not mandatory. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a lot more complicated answer than that, but that's kind of the small answer to that. Does that help? So, by February,
And also Friday or
Friday of February, you will know. And I think this year we had 3 kinders that run the lottery,
No.
like of our 4-year-olds,
The first one started.
all the current ones. But in past years, we might have 3 or 4, but before August, all of them got in through the wait list process. So I can't think of a time where we haven't had, except for like 15 years ago.
It was in 2018, I think that was before we had the law change that we can be preference to
Okay.
kids that attend.
Okay. Well, that's true too. So if, like, for your kiddo, let's say, well, that's for 4-year-olds to kinder, but yeah. So does that help a little bit? Yeah. I don't think it will be a problem, but come back and yell at me if it was. That's right. Yes, ma'am. That's a good question. I know that we have right now 6-year-olds that are on campus. We have 2 options right now. We have the virtual and then we have the in-person. And the other person that's coming, I don't know what age they're going to say. We're still interviewing for that. But we've had as young as 4 and 5-year-olds. Yeah. Yes.
my daughter's in the teen program, is there anything we have to do every year to re-enroll them, or is it automatic at that point?
So it's not automatic, but you'll just get like what you got this year. Here's the enrollment for next year, and you just fill it out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a time for you to update any information and fill out the forms for the state and that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's really cool. I know you also said something about it's more virtual for the younger kids.
It did?
Yeah. Is there a way to do in-person? There's no way I can make something like that. It's not
Sure.
just sit in front of
I'll have to look at that email again. I mean, it really is just dependent on the people. So I don't think like the Mind's Nest has an age level right now.
That's what I
Oh, it's set. Yeah, that's right. It is.
Is that a parent being president kind of a thing where?
Oh, the virtual? So the two people we have right now, the one that does virtual, who does the younger kids, they just really set them up in a little room that we call down here the classroom on a computer, and then someone's kind of overseeing them.
Oh, okay.
It really is work.
It's still
Yeah,
during the school day.
it's still during the school
Oh,
day.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm hopeful that this other person that we'll bring in will take some of the younger kiddos. The only reason Caitlin's on is because her kids are at that age level, so she's trying to keep out of their age group. So, but I'm hopeful that that will be able to be expanded too. Good questions, thank you. So here are some things you can do at home to support consistency. Which this is really hard to see. There's a big circle in the middle of it. I'm not sure why. What I did there. Does it look like it to you? No, it just looks
I
like
can see it.
on this side. It's like a burn spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's on my screen though. It's
That was
interesting.
background.
Yeah, yeah. Model the behavior you want to see with your child without necessary double standards. I used to say without any double standards, and people are like, yeah, that's just not going to happen. I have to keep my phone at the dinner table because of work, right? And so sometimes adults have different roles, right? So thinking about like what that double standard, if it needs to happen, like name it, you know, and help with that. But really trying to, you know, like we don't scream in our house. Then you're going, supper, you know, like just trying to think about like it is. I was working with this young person today, and they had come out to meet with somebody, and I was helping them back in, and they saw something they really wanted to do. And I was texting one of their teachers to see if they could help them transition. And the teacher came out, and I mean, within 30 seconds, just this beautiful, they were back in the studio again. And I said, wow, you know, way to go. And she said, you know, we have just really worked on a bond together by respectful communication, you know, like when they say they need something, I always make sure I follow up with them, right? And so that trust part, you know, which is, gosh, the foundation of our school, and again, we're not perfect, but we really work hard to make sure that we're building that bond. And so the same thing, you might be like, well, of course I'm gonna have a bond, it's my own kid. But I can tell you, I've been in a room with a 14-year-old who we were talking to about a vape, and the parent was like, what are you doing with the vape? You should never have a vape. He goes, Mom, you bought it for me. You know, and like what that does to a long-term relationship, you know? Like even if you say in front of the young person to a police officer, my husband's sick and we need to get to the hospital when he's at home, right? And each time they hear these incongruencies, it affects us. So we really do, and when we make a mistake, we tell them that, you know, like I can't think of a recent scenario, but I have made lots of mistakes with kids, and it's not easy, especially when they're like, I told you, you know, and you're like, you're right, I'm sorry, I should have handled that, I should have asked you before I just assumed, you're right, you know, and so helping to bridge that, you know, in a long-term kind of way. A lot of families will say, like, what do you do for discipline? Because I thought, you know, you are a non-disciplined school. Well, that's not accurate. We most certainly support discipline. But our goal is to support inner discipline instead of external discipline, right? And so when a young person, I'm walking down the hall and I see them like pull someone's ear and try to run, and they turn around and they see me, you know, and I'm like, hi. They're like, I'm like, you're feeling something right now because of what just happened, and they're like, oh no. I'm like, it looks like you are. You can just handle it yourself. What does does that mean? Like, you could probably just go talk to them. I mean, they're like 10 feet from you right now, you know? And so that eventually, when something happens, they just self-correct it, right? Like, don't we want that for our young people? Accountability, right? To not feel like, you know, and some of this, it's really hard. If you have a blended family, you have one way of supporting discipline, the other family might have a different way, and you're trying to blend that with the school who has an even more unique way, right? And so, you know, we want, when we come to two 15-year-olds playing basketball on the mat, like, someone knows you're here, and they're like, yes. As confident as I'll get up. I'm like, great, who knows? You told me, yeah, it was Danielle. Danielle knows. I said, okay, I'm just gonna make sure, actually, Danielle doesn't know. And what you hope for is, you know, especially when kids have been here for a few years, they're just like, actually, we got carried away. We started talking, and we were like, let's just go play basketball for a few minutes. No one will care. And we forgot to ask anyone. I'm like, okay, well, what should you do? Go ask. You know, and it just becomes natural instead of like a sour face or, you know, to my office, you know, like, that's what we want, right? Is that interdiscipline for that to kick in before you give them something else. And sometimes we have to step in a more formal way, you know, and so, but our goal is to help them to do that on their own. A lot of times parents will say, you know, like, it's okay, they're gonna know, they're in trouble, you know, I'm like, oh, please. Like, actually, I'm calling to tell you about this, not for them to be in trouble. They're like, that just sounds so weird to me. Like, the other school, like, they expected me to take away all of their electronic life for at least a month. And I'm like, I hear you, and I'm not saying you can't be a parent in the way you want. I'm just saying that from our experience, if you start punishing your child for things that happen at school, they will get better at hiding what happens. We all get that, right? They just get really good at not letting anyone see it, but they're still doing it. And so we can help and change that by saying, like, you know, they're like, I'm not going to be able to use my tablet forever. And you're like, listen, we already have some parameters in our family about how we use tablets. That's not affecting this. But this was a serious situation where someone could have got hurt, and we're going to talk about it. And that might take more time of our day that we may not have to use the thing that you want to use. But we'll see how it works, you know, but we'll have to practice it too, right? That's something natural or logical instead of like punitive and unrelated. And so those are the things that we would recommend. We don't say good job. I know that's hard. And some of you are like, oh, I'm gonna say good job. I'm like, you do what you need to do. But the reason we're not saying it is why. Yeah.
It makes them look for that external satisfaction or gratification, and then they rely on that as a source of whether or not it is good. So if they draw a picture, then it's not good unless someone listens. So.
Yeah. I mean, your generation has kind of grown up that way. How's it working? Not great. You know? And so it's hard. And it doesn't mean that we don't celebrate. Gosh, when a kiddo is finished putting all the numbers on the board from 1 to 100, and they've done it for 2 hours or 3 days, and they're showing it to you, well, I am excited for them, but I'm mirroring their excitement. I'm not taking it from them. Look, everybody, what Tommy did! And Tommy's like, what is this going on right now? You know? Or, good job, Tommy! Tommy's like, why are you talking so weird to me, right? Like, we're just natural, you know? I said, Tommy, how'd it feel? It was maybe the best thing I've ever done in my life. Wow, I mean, putting all those tiles together? I mean, what was the hardest part? Some people get messed up with the 60s and 70s. Oh, that was easy, but I was struggling with 80s and 90s. 80s and 90s, they're hard too, you know? And we're just having a real, genuine conversation about it instead of making him feel like he needs that from me or that he is different or other than others, right? So we really just want to be present with them and share their excitement and whatever that looks like. Sometimes they're just nervous and embarrassed when you come over, you know, and you're like, you did all the homework, what do you think? And they're like, it's fine. I'm like, it's fine too, you know? And you can be excited, or you could just feel like, he's like, I just want to put it away. go right ahead and put it away, right? You know, like there's no right or wrong. I'm not looking for something. He doesn't need to feel good or not good, you know? Like, we're not trying to coerce them to feel a way that they're not feeling naturally. So sometimes we'll say, if any of you want to try to get off with a good job, junky wording, they'll say to staff members that come here, they're like, I don't know, I've said good job my whole life. I had an internship one time where they made me say good job like 30 times an hour. And they're like, I don't know how to stop. I'm like, say good golly. What do you think about that, you know? Or goodness gracious, I was just seeing that you were working on that, you know, like there's little words that can help you kind of smooth your way out of it. And then soon you realize like it wasn't as important as you thought it was, right? Like kids know you care in lots of ways. The good job is not the way that it has to be, right? They can know you care in lots of other ways. Purposeful, developmental. You know, I'm not saying anything about age here, right? It's all development, independence. You know, like we were talking about with the ramp, right? So, you know, that would be a purposeful, and it would be great, and I don't know your child yet, but, you know, for her to say, could we put a ramp up here, you know, and the kids start thinking about it, and they plan it together, right? And we get a family that maybe has skills in this that make it safe, you know, and we have that conversation about it. And so that's purposeful, it's developmental to that age, and they have that independence for them. You know, they will come home, your 3 and 6, your 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, with their shoes on backwards. It will happen. And it doesn't mean we don't care for them. We care for them so much that we ourselves have to get comfortable with them having their hood down here. You know, because as they're learning, that happens. And then when they recognize it, and sometimes they'll be walking funny, and you're like, your shoes feel funny? And they're like, yes. Most of the time it's no, because, you know, most of the shoes that we wear, it doesn't really matter, especially kids' shoes, right? The Crocs, they have no care in the world because it feels about the same. But we say to them, well, do you want to try a different foot? And then we say, oh, I see. This buckle here, it's going to go on the outside of each foot. Oh, that's how you know? And we'll give them something, but we're not going to go back and say, like, those are wrong. If they're like, are these right? You're like, I wonder what we said about the buckle. Oh, they're on the outside. Hopefully they're like, aha, right? Because then they're going to remember it. If we tell them each time, will they remember it? Maybe, maybe not, because they're probably going to just look at us for the answer. You can all probably remember times you gave too much and they're just like waiting for you to tell them which part's the next part. Do you want to share? Her socks in her lunchbox because she's probably seen it from 5 or 6 other friends. Yeah, because they, you know, they oftentimes, 3 to 6-year-olds, yeah, when they'll go out in the woods, they'll take off their shoes and socks, and it's so good for them, right? In so many ways, and they might have.
They were on their feet.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you're like, oh, there they are. Yeah. It's shoe in her mouth, so we've got all kinds of ways. Not this one. And some don't wear shoes at all. Yeah. Self-regulation, beside and with instead of for and to. Does that make sense to you? Beside somebody, like being beside them, self-regulation. So each studio in the 3 to 9 environments has what's called a glimmer basket. And it's one of the things we're working on with an occupational therapist that's doing DIR4 time with our staff. It's really helping with this developmental, unique time period we're in, where there's more dysregulation than any other time in our human history. And so trying to help young people who might come in the morning dysregulated or something upset them and they become frustrated. And so we're beside them instead of like this. What do you want me to do? You know, or what, right? Like that feeling. And so instead I might be like this, and I might be playing with something over here that they can see, but I'm not like pushing it on them, right? So I'm beside and with instead of for and to. Like, I'll put your shoes on for you. Like, you were frustrated. That shoe will not go on your foot. And I'm wondering what we want to do. Stop talking to me! Oh, you're wrong. You know, and I might just start putting on my own shoe, and real slow, and not even looking at them. And they might try a similar method. And I might really make it big when I put my fingers in here, right? And so I'm just showing, modeling, and then they might just, and it's happened, right? And then all of a sudden they put their shoes on off. Like they're fine now. They've settled through that. Conscious parenting. Start with what you can do well and consistently. Who's heard of conscious parenting? A few of you. I mean, it's a thought process. There's books about it, and we really try to use a lot of that as a teacher. So we, you know, and so the best way I know to explain conscious parenting is if all of us just take one minute to think about how we were raised that we never wanted to do with our own children. Does anyone have a thought in their mind? Like, and then how many times with your own children did you do that thing? Right? So conscious parenting is instead of just autopilot parenting, where we just do the thing that was done to us that we didn't think was good, and now we're doing it to our own kid because I said so, right? And instead, conscious parenting is just giving us that second to think about what we want to say before we say it. Because this job right now is pushing every button in me. And I really want to say because I told you so. But instead, I might say something like, because I wanted us to have time to play outside before we come in and get ready for bed. And then we just hold. You know, and now maybe they're processing, and I might be like wiping something off the walls and like not being, you know, talking, confronting them about it. And then they're like, okay, I'm ready to go outside. Okay. And I'm not saying, see, we would have 5 more minutes if you would have gone when I told you so. Right? Like those are the things that we maybe heard and didn't like and we were never going to use, but we're using them because we get struggling, right? And so conscious parenting is just that thought process. So again, I've got 70, 80, 100 books in my space. If there's things you want to lean into more, let me know. There's also a whole book list in your bag with the ISBN number on it too. Those are just like what I would suggest are some of the best options to start with. Helping your child self-advocate, set personal boundaries, and show respect and care for others. Woo! That's a lot in one sentence, let me tell you. And I remember when my oldest daughter was 15, and she went to the dentist, they took her braces off, and they put her retainer on, and it was a Friday, and on Saturday the retainer popped, and by Monday her teeth had moved. And she called on Monday and left a message, they didn't respond, and she called, no one answered, and Tuesday she called again, and they were like, we don't have any message from you. And she, you know, but we could see you come on in, and then they were like, when did you leave it? Show us on your phone, you know. I'm like, gosh, ageism, right? And so I said to her when she came home crying, let's go back. Like, you can stand up for yourself in this situation, and you can share how this felt from your point of view. And it was hard, and she didn't want to, and she did, and it just took her a step forward into adulthood, right? You know, like she did the thing that she 100% didn't want to do. And she did it on her own accord, you know, I didn't promise her anything. I just said, I think you're going to feel better if you do it, right? So, you know, giving them a way to self-advocate and be respectful, like what we're seeing online, is it respectful? I might be self-advocating, but oftentimes we're seeing things that aren't respectful, right? And so helping them to see that both things can happen at the same time. Thoughts, comments, questions, what I need to have? Yeah.
For older kids that are obviously with first year, do they have a harder time adjusting or maybe a hesitation to this kind of?
Yeah, it really just depends on the kid and the family, to be honest with you. You know, like sometimes, I don't know what age.
16.
16. like, I can think of kids in my head that came in at 14, 15, 16, and it was like this was the place they were always meant to be, right? Like, they never felt like they fit with any of the other places, and then it's just like, and others who kind of liked getting the A and felt comfortable with being, you know, in a big school where they kind of got lost, you know, in that process. And now every day they talk to adults and they're like not used to talking to adults. And it could be like nervous, overwhelming, you know. And I'll say to families, they'll say my teenager's really struggling because they don't think X teacher likes them. And I'm like, can you share more? Because I want to help. And, you know, they're like, well, they like smile and say hi to them every morning. They feel like they're in trouble. And I'm like, they're probably in a desensitizing mode right now, right? You know, because, I mean, when I talk to new teens, they'll say, like, I would go a whole week sometimes and never talk to an adult. Anyway, so that's one example of that. But I think it just so often depends on that person. And I think what works best with transitioning, the older the child gets or the teen, is by just finding a space and time to see if they are vulnerable with you to share what they're thinking, right? And so, you know, if they're like, everyone feels like they know each other but me, you know, like, do you want to do something about that, or do you just want me to know that, you know? And so we're just kind of helping them to sort through those thoughts. And they're like, well, what about if you just message your advisor, it's what we call the teen teachers, and say, like, I don't want you to do anything, but I'm feeling lonely. And I just wanted you to know. Let it go from there and see what happens, right? So anyway, I mean, there's 1,000 different ways for me to answer that question, and I don't know if that's helping, but it really just depends on each kiddo. And I found that when the parents like lean in and we try to all work together on it, it works better. We had one new teen that was like, I don't, you know, the parent didn't show up for PPC, and the teacher was asking about it, and like, I don't want my parent involved in the school. You know, and the teacher was like, huh, can you tell me more? And they're like, no, I just don't want to, you know. And I ended up being the one that called the family and just kind of, you know, like, how are things going? They're like, I think okay, they haven't said much yet. And I'm like, you know, do you kind of know the structure? We really want to still do that PPC, you know, like try to put it all together. Because sometimes it's self-sabotaging, you know, for a young person, especially a teen who feels like this wasn't their choice maybe. I don't know if it was or wasn't for them, but so trying to help them to be like, yeah, in our family, we talk about hard things, you know. And so let's figure out where we want to start with it. So those would be some things to think about. You can tell I could talk for an hour, seriously. You'll hear us talk about work at home. So sometimes your kiddo might be sick, but not really like, you know, they really still want to do their work. Maybe they're the 16-year-old that still has biology assessment this week or et cetera. And so they're still, you know, talking to their advisor and they want to try to make up the test. But they could do an absence waiver. You know, we don't want kids that need to be just resting to be trying to do all the work at home. But sometimes there's a balance between that, right? And especially if you have a kiddo that has some, you know, real needs with attendance or with anxiety, and you want to help to get into really good patterns for them. Like, I know that you're not feeling great. We're still going to do work at home today, you know. And sometimes parents will say, well, what do we do? Well, like, what does your child need, you know? Maybe it's working on their cursive because they're struggling with just writing in general. Maybe it's typing. Maybe it's, you know, meal planning. Maybe it's getting along with their younger siblings, and so they're going to work on a goal sheet about that, you know. So it could really be anything. Sometimes parents work with the teachers, and, you know, like if Karina's my daughter's teacher, and I'm like, hey, she is on her period this week, and it is something we just want her to stay home today. She's really struggling. I think we really want to do some work on her math work that she's been practicing, and she's going to figure out a budget for that trip to Florida we're going to do during October break. She's got this book she's reading, and she's gonna create a child's book out of this book for her younger sibling to read later. And so those were the things we were thinking about for work at home. This is a 10-year-old, right? And so Brandon might be like, sounds great. Make sure that she practices those multiplication facts because she's almost there, you know? And so we write that up on an absence waiver. I pressed that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We won't get into it right now, but it's hyperlinked. You'll get this. We'll send this out tomorrow. And you just type it in. You know, it's not something, this is not the thing we give the team to do by themselves. Just so you know, like they can sit with you, but you should be the one typing it if you have a team because you're the one kind of responsible for that. You're like, I don't know what they have to do, but like, that's good. You can say, tell me. Like, well, I did these, you know, things for algebra. I worked on this project for geography, you know. I'm like, okay, you know, all right, send, you know. So that's really helpful. Who's got the Parent Square app already? Okay, have you found it helpful? Yeah. So it really is, I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but if you go to directory, you can like go right to, do they have the option directory?
Just the studio teachers.
Yeah. So if you go to directory, that's where you can find the studio teachers and you send them a direct message, or a lot of studios have already set up these conversation loops so you can just reply to each other. You've got this stream of consciousness for the whole year, which is also good. You're like, did I already ask them that? And you look through like, yes, 3 weeks ago I told them about our trip to Florida, you know. Let me just remind them, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we really encourage you to utilize that. I think it will be really helpful. We hope that will just help with family engagement. As you can see, you know, things that have already come out, you can look back at things, so hopefully it'll make it easier to find information. Multi-age environments, so, you know, each group has 3 to 6-year-olds together. There's 5 different environments of 3 to 6-year-olds. Sometimes that's confusing. If they weren't able to come in for an orientation, they're like, I don't understand, and I have to wait till September or whatever to do the observation window. Isn't that like September or something? And so there's 5 different, we call them studios for 3 to 6-year-olds, and there's observation windows. And so if you go at that age level and you do the volunteer substitute workshop, you like can stand at that window and watch. At 6 to 9-year-olds, there aren't windows, and so there really isn't a way to observe unless you want to volunteer or sub. And sometimes we'll ask you to start subbing in a room that's not your child's until we know that your child's kind of cool with you being there and it's not going to be on your hip the whole time, right? And then 9 to 12-year-olds, and then these 2 studios out here are 12 to 14, and then these are 14 to 18, so 9 to 10, 11 to 12. So there's 4 different studios down here. So that's kind of how that multi-age, and it's just beautiful to see them learn from each other and with each other in all kinds of ways. You know, the lunches, I know you've read the whole handbook. I'm not going to get all into it right now, but you know, what did you say?
Test time.
Test time, no. But just, you know, try to pack a healthy, helpful lunch and as developmentally appropriate, have your child be involved. You know, they're like, I don't want any vegetables. But instead you're like, you want cucumbers, peppers, or apple, you know? So you can give them those choices, and then they've got, it's not like a surprise each time. I know we all have capacity. So you figure out where you can start with that. It may just be for that one snack a day that you have them involved in that. Birthdays are different at every studio, so just ask if they haven't already told you what's happening with that. So that prepared environment, we'll talk more about that in the sub-volunteer training, but that's part of the role of the adult that's in there to support. You're never leading the whole environment, so if Brandon and I are co-teachers together and she's out sick, then one of you, if you're a sub or volunteers in there with me, and you're mostly just my assistant, you know, you're helping me. And I might say, can you go check on these 3 kiddos to see if they finished their writing prompt from yesterday or whatever, right? And so you might be dusting the shelf or cleaning the floor at the end of the day or whatever, right, in that prepared environment. Drop-off, pickup, any questions about how that's going right now, or anybody like, ooh, I'm still confused, or I know we've said communication like that, but we really just want to be helpful. It's pretty smooth. Smooth?
Very.
Good to know.
I just
Awesome.
want to make sure I get it right. It doesn't matter what phone you come up to in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Green, yeah.
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You're right.
That's how it reads home, but that's our teacher, and I think that's scramble for the 4 parts of the word.
Yeah, that is confusing. I've heard that from a few folks. Yeah, I forget that. Yeah, it really is just to help the children to know which cone to go to.
Okay.
We wish there was a magic way to only let the kids get in the car with the same teachers, but there just isn't. So, and they all get to know each other in the woods anyway. By October, all of the teachers will know all of the kids, and all the
According to
kids
my
will
child, that's all she's done the whole time she's
it's
been
me
here.
in the woods.
Yeah.
You figured it out. Darn it, busted.
She didn't learn no math. She heard the first day.
Oh.
I didn't even learn no math.
Oh.
I want to add to the drop-off pickup. For years, sometimes this is getting a little tricky at the beginning, and you all have been one of the smoothest families coming through. Because one of my fears is all the traffic gets stuck up on St. Joseph Road. We've done our best to try to kind of
Be good
help
neighbors.
that and be good neighbors, and people trying to get through to work or another school or whatever, and energy starts getting. But you all have just done a fantastic job not getting here too early, because that's the key. A lot of families want to get here early, new school, get here, and just kind of just sit. But it is a well-oiled machine if you get here right at your time and the teachers are out there. That thing just keeps moving. So, well done.
Gold stars all around, just for you. So these are just some things coming up. Parent partner conferences. So you just had your first one in August. There's more in November, and then February, and then the last 2 days of school, which is in May. The substitute workshop off August 28th. Child's work night, which is for 3 to 12-year-old families, and so that's where you will sign up for a time, usually 20 or 30 minutes, and come in and just watch your child. You know, you try to work on that observation skill. So instead of asking them a bunch of questions, so what does this mean? How many L's there is in this word? You know, just learn from them. And then if you have questions, you go over to the teacher like, they were doing this last year, why are they showing it to me again? Like, well, they're feeling confident this year. Like, just go with it. Maybe they'll show you so they'll feel more comfortable, even more comfortable the next lesson they review. Review the family handbook, the Inform Montessori blog. How many of you have been on that already? Anybody? Yeah?
Yeah.
You've been able to look through and find anything helpful?
Yeah, I went back there and watched, but before we started, I watched some old videos of
Yeah.
like the graduating class.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Nice.
Yeah. Great.
Lots of good stuff.
And so if you just go to our website, Shining Minds, there's a little place there for current families, and the Inform Montessori blog is linked to that. It's also linked to the Cupola notes each week, I think. Yeah.
I thought it was a couple of for the longest time.
Oh,
I thought you
man.
said a couple of else.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, well, I guess that's more than one meeting. Ask questions we want to hear. You know, like even if you're subbing or volunteering and you're like, I know I've done this 4 times, but I still don't know, blah, blah, blah. You know, the teachers sometimes will get in their own little world, so don't worry, just ask. We want to help. Who's heard of Conmigo? Nobody yet? Wow, that's a whole other conversation. But who's heard of Khan Academy? Okay, so some more of you. So South Khan, who started Khan Academy, so we are a Khan Academy district. And so each studio uses it a little bit differently by level. The teens program, there might be an American history class that uses more Khan Academy than another, etc. But Conmigo is like a personal Socratic robot. And so all of your children that are in studios from 9-year-olds through the high school age all have a Conmigo account. And if they're working on anything at home and they're like, I don't know how to do this, you say, bring up Conmigo. And you will be, I think, you will be amazed. I think it's the best balance with AI that I've ever seen. And we did a lot of research before we chose it. A school in northern Indiana was a pilot for Conmigo in the whole nation. And I think it's fantastic. But anyway, it really is just like, instead of telling you the answer or being a tutor, it will say, you're like, I don't know how to do this problem. And it write the problem in. Like, oh, you're doing a linear equation about cubing, you know. I'm wondering where you think you should start with a linear equation. They're like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, why don't you give it a try? Maybe you can remember about PIMDOS or whatever. It's like having a conversation. And now, even if a child isn't fluently reading, it can read it to you, so you don't have to read it to yourself for a child that might need that support. But I think it really is a beautiful process, and if every family in the school spent 10 minutes a night, 9-year-olds and up, on Conmigo, I think it will change learning, right? Because I think learning will happen so much easier when kids are curious, right, and interested. And, they can have their robot speak with an Irish accent, or that they could talk to a literary character, and say, like, what was life like, Macbeth, when you were alive, right? And then it talks about it from that. So it's really amazing. I'll stop, but check it out if you have a kid at that age level. Study the Montessori method and our school philosophy. So again, we have books if you want, if you're that kind of person. We have a parent engagement series coming up, so look for that information. There'll be workshops like this throughout the year based on certain topics, and you can see what might be interesting to you. And these are some of the resources that are in your bag. These are some of the Montessori parenting resources. So the community engagement, so we talked about the projects that are happening. So I don't know, in a couple of weeks we're going to start spirit wear orders. So where parents could buy spirit wears like Community Montessori shirts, like the shirt staff had on this year, or a different shirt. And that money, as well as yearbooks, and what? Picture day, all of that money goes into this PIP account. And then studios can write proposals to get money for the going out trips. So it's a really neat way. So all the money that you're spending, and we try not to do like a whole bunch of fundraisers, but the money that you're spending, all the profits go into that account, and then staff can use that for going out trips. And so it's really cool because they're like, we want to go to Moringo Cave, and we want to spend the night here, and whatever. And then they're like, we really need $450 to lessen, blah, blah, blah. So, but yeah, it's got lots of ideas on there about things you can do and support.
Zach, can I reiterate something just so there's no confusion what you just said? It's like, it can pay for the going out trip, or it can lower the going out trip. It depends on how much money. So it's not like, you need us to go bring $20 to a week. We've been 40, so you just never know. So that's what
Buses have gone up about 300%. So when we take a big bus out to, what's the place in Florida? O'Bannon Woods. That's where some of the camping trips go, and it's just expensive, $1,500. Things to remember: be slow, mindful, purposeful, and reflective. Read school information. This just links to the staff contacts. Log your volunteer hours. So we want to help you to get to your commitments from the commitments you sign. Naturally connect learning. If you're not sure where your child is on something, just send an email to the teacher. Like, I really want to do some reading with them every night, but they just seem so stressed. What am I doing? What can I do differently? And they'll give you great options with that. Make a plan how to be involved, and we talk about the workshop. Go ahead, Krishna. You can all read that yourself. Questions, thoughts, comments? Yeah.
I have a question. I just wanted to give a little bit of feedback.
Sure.
Our child just started the teens program, and every day he's come home just like bummed out to be at home. He said that he has never felt so at home and like made just tons of friends and is absolutely just elated to be here.
That's so great.
And it's really great as a parent to hear that, to hear that like they feel like they fit in, they feel accepted, and they're just super excited. Like
Wow.
Sunday night rolls around and he's like, I'm so ready to go to school. And it's totally been a change.
That's awesome.
So we're just very happy.
It's taking us long to adjust.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
That's really great.
All the grades and test scores and
Yeah.
for us, not for them.
Right. Yeah. And no phones.
Yes.
Was that a first for them?
No, because he goes to camp every summer and it's a device-free camp.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's used to it.
Right. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I have something just kind of to piggyback on that. My 9-year-old came home her first day of school
And she was exhausted. And she took a nap and she woke up, I guess it was about 8 o'clock. And she started getting ready. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, light outside this morning. She's like, I'm ready to go back to school. So when she got up, and it was 8 o'clock at night and it wasn't the next morning, she was really disappointed.
And they've come in so frequently to see the dogs. It's been so sweet. Yeah. Oh, so sweet. And you don't have to give some sweet story like that. You can ask me anything you want.
I'll piggyback
Yeah.
on that. My son, he started this year at senior. So he's 12. His first day, he came home, didn't like it. He wanted to go back to
Yeah.
his school. Okay. He was stressed, anxious, didn't want any part of it.
That was hard.
Very, very hard for him. And I was like, well, what's wrong with it? And he said, it's too calm. I was like, what? He said, yeah, it's too calm. He's to everyone goofing off and messing with each other and this, that, and the other and being loud. And he didn't know what to do with himself. But every single day, it's gotten better and better. Now he loves it. He's all friends. And he's like, I love it more than my old school. And I'm just so happy.
That's really great.
He is progressive. So fast.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, but the ups and downs,
Oh, and he
Yeah.
also said he feels like he fits in more. Like
Yeah.
he feels like he can be himself.
That's
So,
awesome. That's
I love
great.
that.
Thank you.
I almost didn't want to share because I didn't want to that's not positive. And my daughter kind of, not that it's been negative, but it's been hard for her, what you said, really, because she's used to so much structure, and she likes to have structure, but she's 16 as well, so it's been hard adjusting for her. But she's getting there every day. She really likes her table and she's making new friends, and I love that. And she struggled at the high school with that. But her first assignment was just to write what she expected out of the year, and she kind of had free reign and kind of write whatever she wanted. And she's like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. She's like, I'm used to having like this. It has to
Do
be
this
essay
thing. Yeah, that's
style,
right.
and
Yeah.
has to be this, and she's not used to all this free reign, so she's like, kind of like, it's so overwhelming, and then also being in a new school has been pretty overwhelming too. And she learned she had to take chemistry again, so she was like, ah!
Oh, man.
But she's loving it, as far as like the friends she's making, the environment, and things like
But
that.
she's still getting used
It's
to
gonna
it.
take some
No, and I was thinking about that after you asked that question, like the different personalities, and especially if they've been told what to do, when to do it, and how to get it done, right? And they've gotten comfortable, like they've figured out the formula, and then the formula is gone.
Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense. I'm glad she's talking to you, and hopefully she'll keep talking to you, and you'll keep helping her to bridge those concerns with her advisors so that they can find some, because we most certainly accommodate for all kinds of humans, and so if she needs something until she gets used to it, we want to help her to do that. Oh, good. Yeah, even with his broken arm, because he was racing with some kids. First week of school. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
What are they called? Miss whatever?
Just her names. That's
Okay.
a good thing for me to put in this slide. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I just go by Barbara. We all just go by first names. And I know some of you might be like, we're going to say this and that. We're just going to say to them they can just call us by Barbara, because again, it's to us, respect comes much deeper than that, right? And I call them by their first name, and so if they're saying something that doesn't feel kind or respectful, I'm going to say it no matter what they put in front of my name, right? So, but yeah, we just go by first names. Thank you for asking. Yes.
There's been times that like she's had little sleeping at night, and I'm going to go bring them out and regulate.
what do you guys, when it's like, this is like, I think this is too much. Well, like,
Each child is unique in that, you know? And like you said, for some kiddos, if they don't get the right amount of sleep, like it's gonna be a difficult day. And it could affect their pattern that they're creating, you know, whether it's a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, right? So we really do trust you, you know, to make those decisions, and we want you to communicate with us, right? Like, so we had a kiddo, you know, that got COVID the first week of school, and they were out, the parent kept calling, like, but now they're vomiting, you know, like, we trust you, you know? And we also want to help you to get them on a rhythm. So if it's about sleep, let's talk about some brainstorming about sleep. If it's about X, you know, like we want to help them to be here every day, and we also trust that if something's gone awry, like you do what you think's best at that moment, and then we'll go from there. Yeah.
Thanks for helping us stop in Christmas for this already.
All right. You getting a puppy? All right. I'll keep mum's the word. You're saying no. Oh,
cats.
I know. He said all we have is cats, and I really want a dog.
But you know what? He was definitely afraid of dogs.
Wow.
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 Autism, he was definitely afraid of dogs.
Wow. I would have never known that.
It's also a great school.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. We'll let you know when we go out of town. How about that?
I say the same thing to Barbara too. We had 5 at one point. We started with 1, then we got married, and then we got 5. So that's.
Maybe 5 again. Go ahead.
So we have a 3-year-old, and I was wondering how they go see the dogs.
Yeah, and so sometimes I will bring the dog down to a group that they're having.
Yeah.
Sometimes if they have a moment, the teachers will just text me. If you think that's a good plan for them, let the teachers know. And we'll
Yeah,
make a
I
plan.
just, if she leaves, I don't think she would come back to the room. I think she'd hang out with like the teenagers, and she'd be like, these are my people.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
that's
just wanted to make
fair
sure.
too. Yeah, and most of the time for, you know, I mean, there's some 3-year-olds that, not yet, but that will eventually be able to walk and walk back by themselves. But most of the time, we'll come to them or that we'll walk down with them. You know, and most of the time it's used at that age level just to help to give them a break, or maybe they're missing mom or dad or whatever the situation is, you know.
We evolved down the hall.
Yeah, she's just gonna be like, my friends, and like, she's never met these people, so.
Never met a stranger.
Not a child, like any teenager, yeah.
Yeah. Anyone there is. Yeah.
As far as going outside, like, I know you said it started pouring and then they like sort of thing, and that's fine. Like, the index is pretty high today.
Yeah.
So we just
We're
monitor.
constantly watching that. So we're a very conscious community. And so like this morning in all of their chats, they got the information about when the weather might be. And so you can see our process for heat index on there. So if it's in a certain heat index, orange.
Yeah, there's the zones identified, and it's on the founding handbook towards the end part to look for our weather guidance.
Yeah, orange is the AQI.
I remember reading like the winter side of it, but.
It's all in the same section.
Okay.
So like we have like, you know, they had it be offered water and shade every 15 minutes, you know, we put them, you know, like they couldn't stay out in the sun for more than 15 minutes. So we really work hard at that, and the staff's really conscious of it too.
When I was out there.
Never saying that she's too hot or too
Yeah.
cold or too wet.
Yeah.
She would just stay out, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to know. It might be something just to share with them. I mean, some kids just don't have those feelings for themselves until you realize like, oh, they're getting overheated.
And I can attest to that too, because I'm conscious of that. But the shade is really a lot cooler back there. I could not believe it. And
In the
there's,
woods, yeah.
In the woods, because I'm like, and they were like today I was back there, and there was nobody in the field. They were all in what we call the little woods and the mud kitchen and the digging pit, all these things they put up. So that's all shaded. So it does make a big difference.
Yeah, if you have a child in early ed, like come to the back forward. And if you go to the left side of the building and there's a bridge there, you go right over, and that's what they call Creek Cove. And then there's a pavilion there, and you can kind of see what that area looks like with your child, and they can like give you a tour. So yeah.
So my class start on Thursday,
Uh-huh.
and I'm just looking at these on Thursday. So this one I decided to get, and if you feel like I'm getting out of the class,
So
something out, right?
yeah. So sometimes what happens is if you're lined up for the morning car line, the parent will just get out and undo their buckles. So they can go ahead and get out while you're inching up if you're comfortable with that. And that way they can get out independently once it's their turn. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, luckily, for good reason, it's hard to do, right? They're the 3 to 6 program. Yeah, so no, they just go up to someone and ask them. Yeah, if you have a question, just go to your teacher. And sometimes the teachers will say to put their hand on their arm to get their attention, and sometimes they'll just say, if you stand there, I'll know that you're waiting. Thanks for coming tonight. I'll be around if you have anything else you want to share or questions. We appreciate you being here. Have a great night. Thank you.